Hey, Ask Jimmy the Dean. The question we were posed this week has to do with psychology. Should Christians study psychology? How seriously should it be understood or wrestled with? And then the big one, should it be used in any way for what we call hermeneutics, how we interpret what's going on in the Bible? So let's dive straight in. I'm going to suggest to you there's two fields that are very important to doing theology and understanding who God is, what God's up to in the world, and it's psychology and anthropology. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. Anthropology is the studies of human beings and their cultures, how they form together. A culture is nothing more than a bunch of individuals combined together and they create a dynamic. Now, the study of those individuals and how they live and act is psychology. So, of course, psychology is influenced by two things, your own interior position and also the larger cultural stuff going on around you. So, anthropology and psychology are two very closely related fields. So, it sometimes is an exciting thing to factor in, okay, how is God understanding culture and people? So, anthropology and psychology become important to God. Let me explain to you why. First and foremost, the Hebrew scriptures, particularly starting with the book of Genesis, was a radically different Bible or book or religious studies guide in its day. There were at least three others during the day that had some kind of cosmology or an understanding of how the world came into existence. It could have been the Babylonian and Nemo Elish, it could have been the Sumerians or the early versions of the Upanishads coming out of India. All of them have a way that human beings were created. Every single one of them have human beings being created out of a cosmic battle or something that went sideways or wrong. But then all of a sudden, Moses gives us the Pentateuch, or the Hebrew scriptures we refer to them as, or at least the first five books. And it was a radically different orientation. The deity doesn't give a theo-autobiography, doesn't explain who it is before it starts to explain the story of cosmology or creation. And as a matter of fact, this deity not only doesn't give a name or an explanation of itself, it actually then tries to describe itself through its creation and makes human beings its crowning achievement. So right away, anthropology and psychology in particular of who a human being is put at the very beginning of the Hebrew story, called very good. And the first activity we have between the divine and the human being is a creative activity of naming animals. So just so you know, the human being's ability of creativity, will, and insight is featured as one of the first things in the Hebrew Bible. So I wanted to just give you that hint that something about the Hebrew Scriptures is putting an anthropological and psychological worldview at the beginning. Now, just to add to that, if you remember in Exodus chapter 3, Moses is about to be sent back into Egypt to take on the Egyptian captivity of the Israelite people, or the Hebrew people they would have been referred to at the time. God meets Moses in the burning bush experience, and when Moses asks God for God's name, God's reply is, I'm not going to give you my name. I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And actually says in chapter 3 of Exodus, this shall be my name to all generations. I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And it is, in other words, an anthropological understanding. Like if you know what I did in them, if you saw what I did to transform their lives, you'd know who I am. So it's a very, very powerful thing. Matter of fact, in the Hebrew scriptures, just go and have fun and look for just, say, the first 15 names given to God in the ancient language or the original languages. All of them were verbs, or all of them came from people who encountered God and therefore gave God a name. Maybe Hagar running in the wilderness, when God comes to her and asks her questions about where she is and where she's going. She says, you are El Roi, the God who sees me. Or whether or not it's Jacob who wrestles with God and then refers to that. Or even, let's just say, Gideon, who does similarly, refers to it. You are Bethel, the God who gives me peace. These are names given to God by people. So all of a sudden, people become, and anthropology becomes part of even how we're given insight and story into who God is. Our God, or the Judeo-Christian God, engages people and wants to be known through that encounter. Not simply for this God's sovereign abilities to get stuff done, like creating a world, but actually for the encounter with human beings. Now, I'll give you one more quick insight into how psychology can be informed by theology, and then it becomes a wonderful dance between psychology and theology. Let's just look at the first recorded narrative around sin in the Bible. Not Adam and Eve, which is a wonderful narrative, but you don't have God involved there except to warn at the beginning and then to do the follow-up. You have the sin of Cain. If anyone remembers that, when Cain is angry because his brother's Abel's offering is accepted in his, but not his own. His brother's accepted and not his. You have actually God coming to talk about the potential of what Cain is about to do. And it's wonderful what it says in Genesis. It says, and he comes to Cain and he says, why has your countenance fallen? Why have you become angry? It's amazing that God is calling a human being to a form of self-reflection of what's going on in them. And then when you can tell that Cain doesn't like to have to do that, God then gives a warning. Hey, sin is crouching at your door. It wants to be master over you, but you must master it. It's a fascinating conversation with the human condition, saying this, like, hey, you were meant to have victory, to live a transformed life over these temptations that are hitting you. I'm here to help reinforce your conscience and do this. So all of a sudden, the study of the human being, psychology, sociology, anthropology, become really, really interesting factors when we see God actually engaging our psychology and doing these kind of things. So therefore, I'm going to suggest to you, it is actually a wonderful dance with psychology and anthropology to gain further insights into theology, and in theology, biblical study gives us further insights back into those, and it becomes a delightful dance of knowing, one I think we'll be doing for many years to come. Hey, that's a quick response from Ask Jimmy the Dean.